Once upon a time, in the distant and bustling capital of the kingdom, there lived a boy named Aladdin. Now, Aladdin was a handsome boy, with bright eyes and a quick smile. But he had one very large flaw. He was terribly lazy. While other boys his age were learning trades or helping their families in the rice fields, Aladdin preferred to spend his days roaming the dusty streets, playing games with other idle children, and watching the clouds float by. His father, a hard-working tailor named Mustafa, had tried everything to teach his son the family trade. He had given Aladdin a needle and thread, showed him how to cut the finest silks, and taught him how to stitch a sturdy seam. But Aladdin would simply toss the needle aside and run out the door the moment his father's back was turned. Poor Mustafa became so distressed by his son's refusal to work that he eventually fell ill with grief and passed away. Since that sad day, Aladdin lived alone with Aladdin's mother in a small humble house. To keep food on their table, Aladdin's mother spun cotton day and night, while her son continued to play in the public squares, carefree and wild. One sunny afternoon, when Aladdin was about 15 years old, he was playing in the market square with his friends. The market was a noisy, colourful place, smelling of roasted spices and sweet tea. Unbeknownst to Aladdin, a tall, mysterious stranger was watching him from the shadows of a spice stall. This man was no ordinary traveller. He was a powerful magician, known only as the sorcerer, and he had journeyed all the way from Africa for a very specific purpose. The sorcerer had consulted his magic and studied the stars, learning that a secret treasure hidden deep beneath the earth could only be retrieved by a specific boy from the kingdom. After days of searching the crowds, his dark eyes finally settled on Aladdin. He nodded to himself, smoothing his long, twisted beard. "That is the one," he whispered, "the son of the tailor." The sorcerer stepped out of the shadows and approached the group of boys. His robes were made of strange, dark fabric, and he wore a turban unlike any seen in the kingdom. He tapped Aladdin on the shoulder. "My boy," the sorcerer said, his voice as smooth as honey. "Tell me, is your father Mustafa the tailor?" Aladdin stopped his game and looked up, surprised that this foreigner knew his name. "Yes, sir," Aladdin replied, dusting the dirt off his knees. "But he has been dead for a long time now." Upon hearing this, the sorcerer threw his arms around Aladdin and began to weep loudly. He hugged the boy tight, burying his face in Aladdin's shoulder. "Oh, what terrible news!" the sorcerer cried, pretending to be overcome with sorrow. "My poor dear brother, to think I have travelled all the way from Africa to see him, only to find he is gone." Aladdin was confused. "Brother," he asked, pulling away gently, "I did not know my father had a brother. We were separated many years ago." The sorcerer lied smoothly, wiping a fake tear from his eye. "I have been travelling the world for 40 years, visiting the lands of India, Persia, and Arabia. I finally returned here to embrace my brother, but alas, I am too late." He looked at Aladdin with a warm, kindly expression. "But when I saw you, I knew you must be of his blood. You have his face. At least I can comfort myself by helping his son." The sorcerer reached into his purse and pulled out 2 bright gold pieces. He pressed them into Aladdin's hand. "Go to your mother, my boy. Tell her that her husband's brother has returned and that I will visit her this evening to pay my respects." Aladdin, wide-eyed at the sight of the gold, forgot all his suspicion. He ran home as fast as his legs would carry him. "Mother, mother!" he shouted, bursting through the door. "My uncle has arrived. He is coming to dinner." Aladdin's mother looked up from her spinning wheel, puzzled. "You have no uncle, child," she said with a sigh. "Your father had no brothers." "But he gave me gold," Aladdin insisted, showing her the coins. He cried when I told him father was dead. He said he is from Africa. Later that evening, the sorcerer arrived at their humble cottage. He did not come empty-handed. He brought heavy baskets filled with fine wine, exotic fruits, and delicious meats. He entered the house and immediately fell to his knees, kissing the floor where Mustafa used to sit. "Oh, my unhappy brother," he wailed. Aladdin's mother was moved by the stranger's display of grief. She began to believe that perhaps Mustafa did have a brother. He had simply forgotten to mention. She set the table with the magnificent food the sorcerer had brought, and they sat down to feast. During the meal, the sorcerer told enchanting stories of his travels. He spoke of giant elephants in Africa and palaces made of crystal. Then, he turned to Aladdin. "And what of you, nephew?" he asked sternly but kindly. "What trade do you follow? Are you a tailor like your father?" Aladdin hung his head in shame, while his mother answered for him. "Alas, he is an idle boy. He does nothing but play in the streets. I fear he will never make something of himself." "This is not good," the sorcerer said, shaking his finger. "But do not worry, I am here now. Tomorrow I will take Aladdin to the market. I will buy him the finest clothes, silks and velvet fit for a prince. Then I will buy a shop for him, stocked with the finest goods, so he may become a wealthy merchant." Aladdin's heart leaped with joy. A merchant. He would wear fine clothes and stand in a shop, respected by all, without having to do the hard labor of a tailor. He looked at the sorcerer with admiration. This uncle was surely a blessing from the heavens. "Rest well, nephew," the sorcerer said as he prepared to leave for the night. "Tomorrow, our new life begins." The morning sun had barely risen over the golden domes of the kingdom when Aladdin jumped out of bed. He had hardly slept a wink all night. His heart was racing like a wild rabbit. Today was the day his rich uncle, the sorcerer, had promised to turn him into a fine merchant, and that meant one very important thing first: new clothes. Aladdin washed his face and waited by the door. Sure enough, just as the market stalls were beginning to open, the sorcerer arrived. He smiled a wide, toothy smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, but Aladdin was too excited to notice. "Good morning, my dear nephew," the sorcerer boomed. "Are you ready to look like a proper gentleman?" Aladdin nodded eagerly. They set off into the bustling streets. The sorcerer took him to the finest tailor in the entire city. Aladdin stood as still as a statue while the tailor measured his arms and legs. Within the hour, Aladdin was transformed. He wore a vest of rich crimson velvet, trousers of white silk, and a sash embroidered with gold thread. On his head sat a crisp, new turban, with a small feather tucked into the folds. Aladdin looked in the mirror and gasped. He didn't look like the ragamuffin son of Mustafa the tailor anymore. He looked like a prince. "Now that you look the part," the sorcerer said, patting Aladdin on the shoulder, "we must celebrate. But first, I want to show you the beautiful gardens outside the city gates. It is a fine day for a walk." Aladdin, feeling proud and handsome in his new finery, agreed happily. They walked through the city gates and into the lush, green parks that surrounded the capital. They saw fountains splashing with crystal clear water and peacocks strutting on the lawns. But the sorcerer did not stop there. He kept walking, leading Aladdin further and further away from the city walls. "Uncle," Aladdin asked, panting slightly as his new shoes pinched his toes, "where are we going? We have passed all the gardens." "Just a little further," the sorcerer urged, his voice smooth like honey. "Beyond these hills, there is a garden more magical than anything you have ever seen. I have traveled all the way from Africa to show it to you." To distract the boy from his aching feet, The sorcerer told incredible stories of his travels. He spoke of mountains made of sugar and rivers filled with silver fish. Aladdin listened with wide eyes, forgetting the distance they were covering. They walked past the grand estates, past the farmhouses, and eventually into a barren, rocky landscape where no flowers grew. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows across the rocks. They had reached a narrow valley between two tall, dark mountains. The place was silent. There were no birds singing, no wind blowing. It felt heavy and strange. "We are here," the sorcerer announced, stopping abruptly. Aladdin looked around nervously. "Here? But uncle, there is nothing here but rocks and dust. Where is the garden? Let us go back. My mother will be worried." "Do not worry about your mother," the sorcerer said, his voice suddenly sharp and commanding. "And do not speak of going back. We have work to do. Gather some dry sticks and wood. I need to make a fire." Aladdin was confused and a little frightened by the sudden change in his uncle's tone, but he did as he was told. He gathered a pile of dry brushwood and piled it near a large, flat spot on the ground. The sorcerer took out a flint and struck a spark, setting the wood ablaze. The orange flames danced hungrily. Then, the sorcerer did something that made Aladdin shiver. He reached into his robe and pulled out a small box. He opened it and threw a handful of strange-smelling powder into the fire. "Nam Shabgar!" the sorcerer shouted, chanting words in a language Aladdin had never heard before. He waved his hands over the smoke, which turned from grey to a thick, swirling purple. Crack! A sound like a giant breaking a stone echoed through the valley. The earth beneath their feet began to tremble and shake. Aladdin screamed and covered his head, thinking the mountain was falling on them. But instead of falling, the ground in front of the fire split open. Slowly, heavily, a large square slab of marble rose from the dust. It lay flat on the ground, and in the very center of the stone was a heavy brass ring. Aladdin was terrified. This was not the work of a merchant. This was magic. He turned on his heel, ready to run all the way back to the kingdom. But the sorcerer was faster. He reached out and grabbed Aladdin's arm with a grip of iron. "Stay where you are," the sorcerer growled, his eyes blazing with a strange light. "You are not going anywhere. I want to go home," Aladdin cried, trembling in his beautiful new clothes. The sorcerer raised his hand and, smack! He gave Aladdin a sharp slap across the cheek. It wasn't hard enough to injure him, but it was enough to shock him into silence. Aladdin stared at the man he thought was his kind uncle, tears welling in his eyes. "Listen to me," the sorcerer hissed, leaning down so his face was close to Aladdin's. "I am not doing this to hurt you. If you obey me, you will be richer than the Sultan himself. Beneath this stone lies a treasure that has been hidden for centuries. And you, Aladdin, are the only person in the world who can open it." Aladdin wiped his eyes, looking from the scary man to the mysterious stone with the brass ring. Curiosity began to mix with his fear. "Me?" he whispered. "But I am just a boy." "You are the key," the sorcerer said, his voice softening back to a deceptive sweetness. "Now take hold of the ring and lift." Aladdin stood trembling before the dark, gaping hole in the earth. The marble stone had been moved aside, revealing a steep, narrow staircase that spiraled down into the deep darkness. The sorcerer placed a heavy hand on the boy's shoulder, his grip tight and eager. "Listen to me closely, my boy," the sorcerer whispered, his eyes gleaming with a strange, hungry light. "Down those stairs, you will find a large cavern divided into 3 great halls. In each hall, you will see chests of silver and gold overflowing to the brim. But warn you, Aladdin, do not touch a single coin. If you touch the walls or the treasure in those halls, you will fall down dead instantly. Keep your robe tucked tight around you." Aladdin swallowed hard, nodding quickly. The thought of so much gold was dizzying, but the threat of death was far stronger. "Pass through the halls until you reach the jewel garden," the sorcerer continued. "There, the trees are safe. Walk through the garden until you see a niche in the wall. Inside sits a lit oil lamp. Pour out the oil, tuck the lamp into your sash, and bring it to me. Do this, and you shall have enough riches to live like a prince forever." Seeing the fear on Aladdin's face, the sorcerer pulled a ring from his own finger. It was a thick band of dull metal, engraved with strange, swirling symbols. "Here," he said, sliding it onto Aladdin's thumb. "This ring is a talisman. As long as you wear it, no evil meant for you shall prosper. It will protect you. Now go." Emboldened by the ring and the promise of a princely future, Aladdin gathered his courage. He tucked up his new fine robes and began the descent. The air grew cool and damp as he went deeper into the earth. When his feet touched the bottom, he found himself in the first hall, just as the sorcerer had said. It was a magnificent sight. Great bronze jars stood in rows, filled to the top with gold coins that glittered in the dim light. Aladdin's fingers twitched, but he remembered the warning. Holding his breath and keeping his hands strictly to his sides, he tiptoed past the gold, through the first hall, then the second, and finally the third. At the end of the third hall, the air changed. It became sweet and fragrant, like spring flowers in full bloom. Aladdin stepped out into the jewel garden. It was the most beautiful place he had ever seen. The trees here did not have leaves of green or bark of brown. Instead, their trunks were made of silver and gold, and their leaves were fashioned from delicate crystal. But it was the fruit that amazed him most. Hanging from the branches were fruits of every color imaginable. There were white ones that shone like milk, clear ones that sparkled like diamonds, red ones glowing like fire, and green ones deep as the sea. Aladdin did not know that these were pearls, diamonds, rubies, and emeralds. To his innocent eyes, they looked like beautiful glass balls, perfect toys to play with at home. "Mother would like these colored glass balls to decorate our shelves," he thought. Since the sorcerer had not forbidden him to touch the garden, Aladdin plucked a handful of the heavy fruits. He filled his pockets, stuffed them into his sash, and even hid some inside his shirt until he looked quite bulky. Finally, he found the lamp. It was small, old, and tarnished, hardly looking like a treasure worth all this trouble. He poured the oil onto the ground, just as instructed, and tucked the dry lamp into the folds of his sash, right next to the heavy glass fruits. "I have it," Aladdin whispered to himself. He turned and hurried back through the halls of forbidden gold and scrambled up the steep stairs toward the daylight. When he looked up, he saw the face of the sorcerer peering down from the opening, silhouetted against the bright sky. The man looked impatient, his hands twitching. "Give me the lamp!" the sorcerer shouted down, reaching out a hand. "Hand it to me first, and then I will help you up." Aladdin reached up, but the stairs were high, and he was weighted down by the heavy jewels in his clothes. He struggled to lift his legs over the final jagged step. "Uncle, the step is too steep, and I am heavy with these glass fruits I found. Give me your hand to pull me up first, and then I will give you the lamp." "No!" the sorcerer roared, his face twisting into a mask of rage. "The lamp! Give me the lamp at once!" Aladdin was confused and frightened by this sudden anger. He instinctively backed away, clutching his sash where the lamp lay hidden. "Please, Uncle, just pull me up. I cannot reach." The sorcerer, realizing that the boy was being stubborn and fearing that someone from the city might see them, lost all control. He saw that Aladdin would not give up the prize before being safe. In a fury, the evil man turned away from the hole, He grabbed a handful of magical incense and threw it onto the dying embers of his fire. He shouted 2 harsh, magical words. Thud! The earth shook violently. The heavy marble stone, which Aladdin had lifted with magic earlier, slammed back into place, sealing the opening completely. The sunlight vanished instantly. "Uncle! Uncle!" Aladdin screamed, pounding his fists against the stone ceilings. "Don't leave me! Open the door!" But there was no answer. The sorcerer, believing the lamp was lost to him forever, had stormed away to return to Africa. Aladdin sat alone in the terrifying, suffocating blackness of the treasure cave, buried alive. Aladdin sat in the absolute, crushing darkness of the treasure cave. The heavy stone slab had slammed shut above him, sealing him deep underground. For 2 whole days, the poor boy huddled on the bottom step of the staircase, his stomach rumbling like a thunderstorm. He shouted for his uncle, the sorcerer, until his voice was hoarse and dry, but only the hollow echo of the cave answered him. "I shall die here," Aladdin whispered, shivering in the cold, damp air. "I will never see the sun or my dear mother again." His pockets were heavy with the sparkling fruits he had gathered from the jewel garden, diamonds, rubies, and emeralds masquerading as glass. But they could not be eaten. Beside him lay the old rusty oil lamp, useless and forgotten. In his utter despair, Aladdin clasped his hands together to pray for help. He squeezed his hands so tight that his fingers rubbed hard against the heavy iron ring the sorcerer had forced onto his finger before he descended. Suddenly, the cave was filled with a strange, pink mist. The ground trembled, not with an earthquake, but with power. Out of the stone floor rose a massive figure, glowing with a soft, eerie light. It was a spirit, taller than the tallest tree, with eyes like burning coals. Aladdin gasped and pressed his back against the cold wall. "I am here, master," the spirit boomed, his voice sounding like rocks tumbling down a mountain. "I am the genie of the ring. I am ready to obey thee as thy slave, and the slave of all who possess the ring on thy finger. What is your wish?" Aladdin was terrified, but his desire to live was stronger than his fear. He scrambled to his feet. Whoever you are," he stammered, "get me out of this place. Take me home." He did not even finish blinking his eyes before the damp air of the cave vanished. In a heartbeat, the darkness was replaced by the bright, familiar sunlight of the kingdom. Aladdin found himself standing right outside his own front door. He was dizzy and confused, but overjoyed. He burst into the house shouting, "Mother! Mother! I am home!" Aladdin's mother had been weeping for 2 days, certain that her son was lost forever. When she saw him, she cried out with joy, but she was shocked by how pale and weak he looked. Aladdin told her the whole terrible story, how the sorcerer was not his uncle, but a cruel magician, how he was trapped, and how the magical ring had saved him. "That wicked man!" she cried, hugging him tight. "But you are safe now, my son. That is all that matters." However, safety did not fill their bellies. By the next morning, there was not a grain of rice left in the house. Aladdin looked at the pile of sparkling stones he had brought from the treasure cave. "Mother," he said, "I have these pretty glass fruits, but we cannot eat glass. Perhaps I can go to the market and sell the old lamp I found. It might be worth a few copper coins." Aladdin's mother looked at the rusty, dented lamp. "It is very dirty," she said, finding a rag and some sand. "If I polish it, perhaps it will shine, and we can get a better price for it." She took the lamp to the kitchen table and began to rub the grime away. She rubbed it once. She rubbed it twice. Whoosh! This time, the magic was even more violent than before. A cloud of thick grey smoke exploded from the spout of the lamp, filling the tiny room. The smoke swirled and hardened into a shape far more terrifying than the spirit in the cave. This figure was gigantic, his head touching the ceiling, his arms as thick as tree trunks, and his face thunderous and fierce. "I am the genie of the lamp," the giant roared, his voice shaking the pots on the shelves. "I am the slave of the one who holds the lamp. What is your wish?" Aladdin's mother took one look at the terrifying monster and screamed. Her knees gave way, and she fainted dead away, falling to the floor with a thump. Aladdin, having already met the genie of the ring, was frightened but not paralyzed. He saw the lamp rolling on the floor near his mother's hand. He quickly snatched it up. "I am hungry," Aladdin shouted boldly at the giant. "Bring me something to eat." The genie of the lamp bowed his massive head. "To hear is to obey." In a flash, the giant vanished. Before Aladdin could even take a breath, the genie returned. He balanced a massive tray made of pure silver on one hand. On the tray were 12 silver dishes, filled to the brim with steaming meats, fluffy rice, fresh bread, and exotic fruits. There were also 2 silver cups and bottles of the finest sweet drinks. The smell was heavenly, better than anything cooked in the king's palace. The genie placed the tray gently on the floor and disappeared in a puff of smoke. Aladdin splashed some water on his mother's face. She woke up, groggy and scared. "The monster! Where is the monster?" she whispered. "He is gone, mother." Aladdin smiled, pointing to the feast. "Look, he has brought us breakfast." Aladdin's mother stared at the silver plates. She had never seen such luxury in her life. They sat down and ate like kings, savoring every bite of the magical meal. Little did they know, this was only the beginning of their new life, and the strange, quiet power of the lamp was about to change everything in the kingdom. The room was silent for only a heartbeat after Aladdin spoke. Then, the terrifying genie of the lamp bowed his massive head. His voice rumbled like distant thunder, shaking the dust from the rafters. "Your wish is my command, master," the genie boomed. In a swirl of thick grey smoke, the giant vanished. Aladdin's mother gasped, clutching her chest, her eyes wide with fear. But before she could say a word, the smoke cleared, and a wondrous sight appeared on their broken wooden table. Where there had been nothing but empty air, there now sat 12 magnificent silver platters. They were piled high with the most delicious food imaginable. There was roasted lamb, seasoned with fragrant herbs, rice as yellow as the sun, and studded with raisins, steaming loaves of white bread, and bowls of fresh, colourful fruits that sparkled like gems. Beside the food stood 2 silver cups and 2 bottles of clear, sweet nectar. "Mother, look!" Aladdin cried, his stomach growling loudly at the smell. "The Sultan himself does not eat this well." Aladdin's mother was still trembling. Is this evil magic, my son? Can we eat food brought by a spirit?" "It is a gift, mother," Aladdin said, breaking off a piece of warm bread and handing it to her. "We are starving. Let us eat and be thankful." Driven by hunger, they sat down and began to feast. The food was more delicious than anything they had ever tasted. They ate until they could eat no more, and for the first time in many years, their hearts felt light and their bellies full. That night, they slept soundly, safe in their home in the kingdom. The next morning, there was still plenty of food left on the silver platters. Aladdin and his mother ate the leftovers for breakfast and then for dinner. The magic feast lasted them for several days, but eventually the bread was gone, the meat was finished, and the fruit was eaten. All that remained were the 12 heavy silver platters and the silver cups. Aladdin looked at the empty plates. He was no longer the lazy boy who played in the streets, while his father, Mustafa, worked. The dark time in the treasure cave had changed him. He knew he had to take care of his mother. "Mother," Aladdin said, picking up one of the heavy silver plates. "I will take this to the market. If I sell it, we will have money to buy grain and oil." He hid the silver plate under his vest and walked into the bustling streets of the kingdom. He found a shop owned by an old merchant with a pointy beard and greedy eyes. Aladdin placed the silver plate on the counter. "Sir, will you buy this?" Aladdin asked. The merchant's eyes widened when he saw the pure silver. He knew it was worth a fortune, but he saw that Aladdin was young and dressed in rags. The merchant frowned, pretending the plate was worthless. "It is dirty and old," the merchant lied. "But since I am a kind man, I will give you 1 gold piece for it." Aladdin's jaw dropped. He had never held a gold piece in his life. He thought the merchant was very generous. "Done!" Aladdin cried. He took the gold coin and ran home, feeling like a rich man. The 1 gold coin bought enough food for many weeks. When the money ran out, Aladdin took another silver plate to the same greedy merchant. This continued for many months. The merchant cheated Aladdin every time, paying him only a tiny fraction of what the silver was truly worth. But Aladdin and his mother lived comfortably enough, so they did not complain. Eventually, only one item remained, the large silver tray that had held all the platters. It was too heavy for Aladdin to hide under his vest. When he carried it to the market, a different merchant stopped him. This man was an honest goldsmith with a kind face. "My boy," the goldsmith said, "that is a magnificent tray. May I weigh it?" Aladdin nodded. The goldsmith weighed the silver and gasped. "This is worth 70 gold pieces," the man said honestly. "Here is your payment." Aladdin was shocked. He realized the first merchant had cheated him. But he was not angry. He was wiser. He took the 70 gold pieces and gave them to his mother. Now, they had enough money to live for years without worry. Time passed. Aladdin used his free time to learn. He no longer played with the street urchins. Instead, he dressed in clean clothes and walked through the market, listening to the wise men talk. He learned about the world, about business, and about how to be a gentleman. He grew from a boy into a handsome, clever young man. One bright afternoon, Aladdin was walking near the city gates when he heard the loud beating of drums. Boom! 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 The town criers rode through the streets, shouting, "Clear the way! Close your shops! Shut your windows! The princess, the daughter of the sultan, is going to the bathhouse. No commoner may look upon her face." The people of the kingdom rushed to obey. Doors slammed shut, and shutters were bolted tight. It was the law. Anyone who looked at the princess would be punished severely. Aladdin stood behind a heavy wooden door, his heart racing. He had heard stories of the princess. People whispered that she was the most beautiful girl in the entire world, like a full moon in a dark sky. Curiosity burned inside him. He didn't want to hide like everyone else. He wanted to see her. Quietly, while the guards were shouting at people to look away, Aladdin slipped behind the door of the bathhouse entrance. There was a tiny crack in the wood, just big enough for one eye to peek through. He held his breath, waiting for the royal procession to arrive. The day had finally arrived, when the Sultan's daughter, the most beautiful princess in the kingdom, was to visit the public baths. Orders had rung out through the streets that all shops must close, and all citizens must stay indoors, behind shuttered windows. The streets were to be empty, so that the royal procession could pass undisturbed. But Aladdin, driven by a curiosity that had grown stronger as he became a young man, had a different plan. While the rest of the city hid away, Aladdin slipped quietly through the winding alleys. He found his way into the bathhouse before the guards arrived and squeezed himself behind a heavy wooden door in the main hallway. His heart hammered against his ribs. Like a trapped bird, he knew that if he were caught, the punishment would be severe. But the stories of the princess's beauty were like legends, and he simply had to know if they were true. Soon, the sound of marching footsteps and delicate bells filled the air. A grand procession entered the hall. At the center walked the princess, surrounded by her handmaidens. Just as she passed the spot where Aladdin was hiding, she paused. Believing she was safe and unseen, she lifted the silken veil that covered her face to breathe the cool air of the bathhouse. Aladdin gasped silently. He felt as if the sun had suddenly risen inside the dark hallway. Her eyes were like sparkling stars, and her smile was more gentle than the morning breeze. In that single moment, the boyish mischief in Aladdin's heart vanished, replaced by a deep and aching love. He stood frozen, enchanted, until the princess moved on and disappeared into the inner chambers. When Aladdin finally returned home, he was not the same young man who had left. He walked in a daze, his eyes seeing nothing but the memory of the princess. He sat down on the simple rug in their living room and stared at the wall without speaking. Aladdin's mother was busy preparing their supper. She looked at her son with worry. "Aladdin, are you ill? You look as pale as a sheet. Come, eat some of this stew." "I cannot eat, mother," Aladdin whispered, his voice trembling. "Not eat." She bustled over and felt his forehead. "Do you have a fever? Did something happen in the market?" Aladdin took a deep breath. "Mother, I am not sick, but I have seen the Sultan's daughter. I hid in the bathhouse and saw her face, and now I know that I cannot live without her. I intend to ask the Sultan for her hand in marriage." Aladdin's mother dropped the wooden spoon she was holding. It clattered loudly on the floor. She stared at him, then burst into nervous laughter. "Oh, my foolish son, you have finally gone mad. We are the family of a poor tailor. Your father, Mustafa, rest his soul, would think you had lost your wits. You cannot marry a princess. That is for princes and kings, not for us." "I am serious, mother," Aladdin said, his eyes burning with determination. "I love her." "Love does not fill a sultan's treasury," she cried, throwing her hands up. "You cannot go to the sultan empty-handed. He would have our heads cut off for such impudence. We have nothing to offer him." Aladdin smiled mysteriously. He stood up and went to the corner of the room where they kept an old dusty chest. Inside, hidden beneath some rags, were the strange, colorful fruits he had gathered years ago from the jewel garden in the underground cave. At the time, he thought they were merely pretty glass balls, but since learning about trade in gold from the merchants in the market, Aladdin had begun to suspect they were something more. He brought the porcelain bowl filled with the fruits to the table. "Mother, do you remember these? The glass toys from the cave?" she asked, confused. "They are pretty, yes, to play with." Aladdin tipped the bowl. Out poured stones of green, red, blue, and white. But in the candlelight of their humble home, they didn't just shine. They blazed. The green ones were emeralds as big as plums. The red ones were rubies the size of apples. The clear ones were diamonds that sparkled with blinding light. The room was suddenly illuminated by a rainbow of brilliance. Aladdin's mother gasped, covering her mouth. She had never seen such wealth, not even in her wildest dreams. "Aladdin, these are real?" "They are the rarest jewels in the world," Aladdin said confidently. "I have looked at the gems in the jewelers' shops, and they are like sand compared to these rocks. This gift will prove to the Sultan that I am worthy." His mother trembled as she touched a large sapphire. "This is a gift fit for an emperor," she whispered. Her fear began to mix with a strange hope. If these stones were real, perhaps her son wasn't so crazy after all. "You must take them to the palace tomorrow," Aladdin urged her. "Wrap them in your finest white napkin and present them to the Sultan. Tell him of my love." Though she was terrified of entering the royal court, the blinding light of the jewels gave her courage. She nodded slowly. "I will go, Aladdin, but if the Sultan is angry, we are surely lost." That night, neither of them slept. Aladdin dreamed of the princess, while his mother polished the magnificent gems, preparing for the most dangerous journey of her life. The morning sun had barely risen over the kingdom when Aladdin jumped out of bed. He was wide awake, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and terror. Today was the day. Today, his mother would go to the palace to speak to the Sultan. "Mother, please, you must hurry," Aladdin pleaded, pacing back and forth across their small, humble room. "Every moment we wait is a moment the princess might be promised to someone else." Aladdin's mother sighed, shaking her head. She loved her son dearly, but she still felt that this mission was pure madness. "Patience, my boy," she said, her hands trembling slightly, as she picked up a china bowl. Into this simple kitchen bowl, they had poured the sparkling treasures Aladdin had brought back from the jewel garden underground. Diamonds as big as walnuts, emeralds the size of plums, and rubies that glowed like burning coals. To keep them hidden from prying eyes, she covered the bowl with a plain, white linen napkin. To anyone passing by on the street, it looked as though she were merely carrying a bowl of fresh fruit, or perhaps a lunch for a worker. No one would guess that she held enough wealth to buy a dozen palaces. "I will go," she promised, tying her shawl tight. "But do not be disappointed if the Sultan laughs me out of the room. We are but poor folk, Aladdin." Aladdin kissed her cheek. "With what is in that bowl, we are not poor anymore. Go with courage." Aladdin's mother walked through the busy streets of the kingdom. Her heart beat like a drum against her ribs. She felt very small as she approached the palace gates. The guards, tall and stern with shining scimitars, towered over her. However, because the Sultan held a public audience that day, where anyone could present a petition, they let the old woman pass. She entered the grand hall of audience. It was a magnificent room, supported by pillars of marble and gold. At the far end sat the Sultan on his throne, surrounded by his advisors, generals, and the Grand Vizier. The room was crowded with merchants, nobles, and citizens seeking justice. Aladdin's mother, feeling terribly out of place in her worn clothes, squeezed into a corner at the very back. She watched as people stepped forward, bowed, and spoke to the Sultan. But every time there was a pause, her courage failed her. She could not bring herself to walk up to the throne. The day ended, the session closed, and the Sultan left. Defeated, Aladdin's mother walked home. When Aladdin saw her return with the bowl still covered, his face fell. "I could not do it, my son," she confessed. "The Sultan is too grand, and I was too afraid. You must try again tomorrow." Aladdin urged gently, "Please, for my sake." So the next day, she went back. And the day after that, for 6 days, the loyal mother stood at the back of the grand hall, clutching the napkin-covered bowl, too shy to speak. She became a familiar sight to the court, the quiet old woman who simply watched and waited. On the 7th day, the Sultan noticed her again. He leaned over to his Grand Vizier. "I have seen that old woman standing there every day for a week. She carries something in her hands, yet she asks for nothing. Bring her to me." The Grand Vizier signaled the guards. Aladdin's mother froze as 2 large guards approached her. She thought she was in trouble, but they gently guided her to the foot of the throne. She fell to her knees, bowing her forehead to the beautiful carpet. "Rise, good woman," the Sultan said kindly. "For days I have seen you here. What is it you seek? Do not be afraid." Aladdin's mother stood up, clutching the bowl tight. "O King of the Age," she stammered, "I have a request so bold, so impossible, that I fear you will punish me for even speaking it." The Sultan smiled. "You have my word that no harm shall come to you. Speak freely." Taking a deep breath, she spoke. My son Aladdin has seen your daughter, the princess. His heart has been captured completely. He cannot eat. He cannot sleep. He wishes to have the honor of marrying her. A ripple of shock went through the court. The Grand Vizier scowled. A tailor's son marrying the princess? It was an insult. He opened his mouth to shout at the woman, but the Sultan held up a hand. "And what is that you carry?" the Sultan asked, looking at the bowl. "My son knows he is not of noble birth," she said, her hand shaking as she reached for the napkin. "But he sends this gift as a token of his sincerity." She pulled away the white cloth. Gasps filled the massive hall. It was as if a rainbow had suddenly exploded in the room. The light from the jewels, the fruits of the jewel garden, was so intense it dazzled the eyes of everyone present. The Sultan sat up straight, his eyes wide. He had never seen gems of this size, clarity, or color in his entire treasury. The Sultan turned to the Grand Vizier, stunned. "By the beard of my ancestors, have you ever seen such wealth? This simple bowl is worth more than my entire city. Surely, a man who can offer such a gift is worthy of my daughter." Aladdin's mother felt a surge of hope. The Sultan was smiling. However, the Grand Vizier was not smiling. His face was pale with jealousy. He had secretly planned for his own son to marry the princess. He could not let this upstart boy, this Aladdin, steal the prize. "Your Majesty," the Vizier whispered urgently into the Sultan's ear, his voice dripping with poison. "The gift is indeed pretty, but do not be hasty. We know nothing of this boy. Perhaps he stole these gems, or perhaps he found a lost hoard." The Sultan hesitated, looking from the glittering bowl to his trusted advisor. "But Vizier, look at them." "Majesty," the Vizier pressed on, speaking low so the mother could not hear. "If this boy is truly as wealthy as this gift suggests, surely he can offer more. You must set a condition, a test, something to prove he is not just a lucky thief, but a prince in disguise. Stole him. Give my son a chance to find a greater gift." The Sultan stroked his beard, considering the advice. He looked at the anxious mother, then back at the scheming Vizier. The decision hung in the air, heavy as a storm cloud. Aladdin High's mother walked home from the palace with a spring in her step that she hadn't felt in years. Her heart felt lighter than the air itself. She hurried through the dusty streets, clutching her shawl, eager to tell her son the good news. When she arrived at their humble house, Aladdin was waiting by the door, his eyes wide with anticipation. "Well, mother," he asked, helping her inside, "did the Sultan see the jewels? Did he chase you away?" "Oh, my son," she gasped, catching her breath. "It is better than we dared to dream." The Sultan was dazzled. He stared at the gems from the jewel garden as if they were stars plucked from the sky. He agreed to the marriage. Aladdin's face lit up like a sunrise. He agreed. "I am to marry the princess?" "Yes," his mother nodded, though her smile faded just a little. "But there is one condition." The Grand Vizier whispered something in the Sultan's ear, and the Sultan changed his mind slightly. He said that because it is such an important royal wedding, he needs time to prepare. He asked us to wait for 3 months. After 3 months, you shall marry the princess. Aladdin let out a long sigh of relief. 3 months is a long time for a heart that is waiting, he said, pacing the room with new confidence. But the word of a sultan is gold. I will wait. I will use this time to learn how to be a proper noble. For the next few weeks, Aladdin did exactly that. He did not spend his magic recklessly. Instead, he observed the manners of the wealthy merchants in the market. He dressed in fine silk robes that the genie of the lamp provided upon request, and he carried himself with the dignity of a prince. He was patient, trusting the promise of the king. However, the Grand Vizier had no intention of letting a tailor's son marry the princess. He wanted the princess for his own son. He spent every day of those 2 months whispering poison into the Sultan's ear, convincing him that Aladdin was gone, or that the promise was forgotten. One evening, exactly 2 months after the visit to the palace, Aladdin's mother went into the city to buy some oil for their lamps. As she walked, she noticed the streets were unusually bright. Lanterns of red and gold hung from every rooftop. The sound of trumpets and drums echoed off the stone walls, and the smell of roasting lamb filled the air. She stopped a shopkeeper. "What is happening tonight? Is it a festival?" The shopkeeper laughed. "Have you not heard, old woman? Tonight is the wedding of the princess. The Sultan has given her hand to the Grand Vizier's son. The ceremony is happening right now." Aladdin's mother dropped her oil jar. It shattered on the ground, but she didn't notice. Panic seized her heart. The Sultan had broken his promise. She ran home as fast as her legs could carry her, bursting through the door with tears in her eyes. "Aladdin! Aladdin! We are betrayed!" she cried. Aladdin looked up from a book he was studying. "What is it, mother?" "The lights! The music! It is the wedding!" she sobbed. "The Sultan has forgotten you. Tonight, the princess is marrying the Grand Vizier's son." Aladdin stood up slowly. His face did not show fear, but a cold, determined anger. He walked to the corner of the room, where he kept the rusty oil lamp hidden safely away. "Do not weep, mother," Aladdin said calmly. "The Sultan may have a short memory, but I have a powerful friend." He went to his room and shut the door. Taking the lamp in his hands, he rubbed the bronze surface gently. Immediately, the room filled with thick, swirling smoke, and the gigantic form of the genie of the lamp materialized, filling the small space. "I am here, master," the genie boomed, his voice like thunder wrapped in velvet. "What is your wish?" "Genie," Aladdin said, his voice steady. "The Sultan has broken his word to me. Tonight, the princess has been married to the vizier's son. I cannot allow this. Shall I turn the palace into a pumpkin?" the genie asked with a mischievous grin. "Or perhaps turn the vizier into a toad?" "No," Aladdin said. "I want you to wait until the wedding celebration ends. When the bride and groom are taken to their royal chamber for the night, I want you to bring them, bed and all, right here to my room." The genie bowed low. "It shall be done, my master." Hours passed. The noise of the celebration in the city finally died down. Midnight struck. Suddenly, a rush of wind blew through Aladdin's house. The walls seemed to stretch, and in a blink of an eye, the magnificent royal bed appeared in the center of Aladdin's room. On it sat the princess and the vizier's son, looking completely confused and terrified. "Where are we?" the vizier's son squeaked, looking around the humble room. Aladdin stepped forward. "You are in my house," he said sternly. He turned to the genie, who was hovering invisibly in the shadows. "Genie, take this man, the vizier's son, and put him outside in the woodshed. Let him sleep in the cold and the dark. He does not belong here." Whoosh! The vizier's son vanished instantly, transported to the cold, drafty shed outside. The princess was trembling, pulling her silk blankets up to her chin. Aladdin bowed respectfully to her. "Fear not, princess," he said gently. "I am Aladdin. Your father promised your hand to me, and I only seek to remind him of his word. You are safe here. No harm will come to you." Aladdin took a sword and laid it in the center of the room, creating a barrier between himself and the royal bed to show his honor. "Rest now," he whispered. "Tomorrow the Sultan will see his mistake." The princess, seeing the kindness in Aladdin's eyes, stopped shaking. But as the sun began to rise, Aladdin knew the real test was about to begin. The genie would soon have to transport them back before the Sultan woke up. leaving everyone wondering if it had all been a dream. Before the first rays of the sun could touch the spires of the Sultan's palace, Aladdin knew it was time to end the night's mischief. He rubbed the old oil lamp gently. Immediately, the room was filled with a warm, mystical glow. As the genie of the lamp appeared, bowing low, "What is your wish, master?" The genie boomed softly. "Take the bride and groom back to the royal palace." Aladdin commanded, "Put them exactly where you found them, so no one suspects they ever left." In a blink, the terrified princess and the shivering son of the Grand Vizier vanished from Aladdin's humble home. When the Sultan and the Queen arrived at the newlyweds' chamber that morning to offer their congratulations, they found a very strange scene. The groom was hiding under the covers, trembling from the cold, and the princess was sitting in silence, looking very unhappy. The groom was so frightened by his magical ordeal that he begged his father, the Grand Vizier, to annul the marriage immediately. "I cannot spend another night in that haunted room," he cried. "There are invisible forces that toss me into the cold." The Sultan, seeing his daughter's distress and the groom's cowardice, agreed to cancel the wedding. The celebration was called off, and peace returned to the city. Aladdin waited patiently until the original 3-month period he had been promised was over. Then, he asked his mother to bring another gift of jewels to the Sultan. "Remind him of his royal promise," Aladdin said. When the Sultan saw the magnificent gems, even brighter and larger than the first batch from the jewel garden, and remembered his word, he agreed to let Aladdin marry the princess. However, he had one condition. "If your son wishes to marry a princess," the Sultan told Aladdin's mother, "he must prove he can provide a home worthy of her. Tell him to build a palace opposite my own." Aladdin smiled when he heard the news. He took the lamp and summoned the genie of the lamp once more. "I need you to build me a palace," Aladdin said, his eyes shining with excitement. "It must be situated right across from the Sultan's castle. Build it of jasper and marble, with a dome of pure gold. Fill it with treasures, servants, and the finest horses, and make sure there is a grand hall with 24 windows, all set with emeralds and rubies, except for one left unfinished. To hear is to obey," the genie replied. Overnight, a miracle occurred. Where there had been only empty dust, a magnificent palace now stood, shimmering in the morning light. It was a masterpiece of architecture, far grander than anything the kingdom had ever seen. The Sultan looked out his window and gasped. He was so impressed that he ordered the wedding to take place that very day. Aladdin and the princess were married in a celebration that lasted for days. The people of the kingdom loved Aladdin, for he was kind and generous. He would ride through the streets, tossing gold coins to the poor, and everyone praised his name. For a long time, Aladdin and his princess lived in perfect happiness, and Aladdin almost forgot about the dark day in the treasure cave. But far away, deep in the heart of Africa, trouble was brewing. The sorcerer had not forgotten the boy he left to die. One day, feeling curious, he decided to use his magic sand divination to see how the boy's bones looked in the underground cave. He cast his spells, arranging the sand to show him the truth. To his shock, the sand did not show a skeleton. It showed a young prince, living in a palace of gold, married to a royal princess, and, most importantly, possessing the magic lamp. The sorcerer's face turned red with rage. "That miserable tailor's son is alive," he hissed, smashing his table. "He has escaped with my lamp and is living the life that belongs to me." Filled with envy and hatred, the sorcerer packed his bags immediately. He traveled night and day, crossing deserts and seas, until he finally arrived at the capital of the kingdom. He disguised himself as a merchant and walked through the busy market, listening to the gossip. Everywhere he went, people spoke of the wonderful Prince Aladdin. and his magical palace. The sorcerer stared up at the magnificent structure Aladdin had built. His eyes narrowed into slits of cold malice. "Enjoy your throne while you can, boy," he whispered to himself, clutching a basket of shiny new copper lamps. "For I have a plan to take back what is mine." The sun was high and hot over the kingdom when the wicked sorcerer arrived. He did not come with an army or a sword, but with a clever, devious trick. He knew that Aladdin was away on a hunting trip, and he knew that the magical lamp, the source of all Aladdin's power, was likely sitting dusty and forgotten in a corner of the palace. The sorcerer disguised himself as a foolish old peddler. He walked through the streets near Aladdin's magnificent palace, carrying a basket full of shiny, polished copper lamps. He shouted in a sing-song voice that made the children laugh. "New lamps for old! Who will exchange their old rusty lamps for bright new ones? New lamps for old!" Inside the palace, the princess heard the commotion. She looked out the window and saw the peddler. "How strange," she said to her handmaidens. "Why would anyone give away new lamps for old junk? Look, there is that ugly, tarnished oil lamp that my husband keeps in his dressing room. It is such an eyesore in this beautiful palace. Let us trade it for a shiny one to surprise him." Not knowing the secret of the lamp, the princess ran down and exchanged the magical object for a worthless copper bauble. The moment the sorcerer held the lamp, his eyes gleamed with malice. He ran to a quiet field, rubbed the lamp, and summoned the genie of the lamp. "I obey, master," thundered the genie, his voice sounding sad to serve such a wicked man. "Transport Aladdin's palace, the princess, and me to the farthest deserts of Africa," the sorcerer commanded. In a blink, the ground shook. With a rush of wind, the entire palace vanished from the kingdom, leaving only an empty patch of dirt. When the sultan looked out his window and saw his daughter and the palace gone, he was heartbroken and furious. When Aladdin returned from hunting, he found the sultan in tears and the people in panic. "Where is my wife? Where is my home?" Aladdin cried. He realized instantly that this was the work of the evil sorcerer. Aladdin fell to his knees in despair, wringing his hands. As he did, his fingers brushed against the magic ring he still wore, the one the sorcerer had given him long ago in the treasure cave. Whoosh! The genie of the ring appeared, smaller and humbler than the genie of the lamp. "What is your wish, master?" "Bring my palace and my wife back to me," Aladdin begged. "I cannot," said the genie of the ring. "The genie of the lamp is far more powerful than I. I cannot undo his magic, but I can take you to wherever they are. Take me there at once," Aladdin shouted. Instantly, Aladdin found himself in Africa, standing beneath the window of his own palace. He climbed up secretly and found the princess weeping. She was overjoyed to see him and quickly explained how she had been tricked. "Do not worry," Aladdin whispered. "I have a plan. You must pretend to be kind to the sorcerer tonight. Invite him to dinner, and when he is not looking, pour this sleeping powder into his wine." That evening, the princess put on her finest silk and invited the sorcerer to dine. The sorcerer was delighted, thinking the princess had finally accepted him. He drank deeply from his goblet, and within moments, his eyelids grew heavy. Thump! He fell fast asleep, snoring loudly on the table. Aladdin burst from his hiding spot. He pushed the sleeping sorcerer aside and snatched the lamp from the villain's belt. He rubbed it furiously. The genie of the lamp appeared, a giant smile on his face. "Aladdin, oh how I have missed you, my true master." "I have missed you too," Aladdin said. "First, send this wicked sorcerer to a deserted island where he can never harm anyone again. Then, take this palace, the princess, and me back to the kingdom." The genie snapped his fingers. The sorcerer vanished into thin air, never to be seen again. Then, the palace lifted gently into the night sky. They flew over oceans and mountains, landing softly back in the kingdom. Just as the sun was rising, the Sultan wept tears of joy to see his daughter returned. Aladdin and the princess embraced, promising to never let the lamp out of their sight again. They lived in happiness and peace for many long years. When the old Sultan passed away, Aladdin took the throne. He ruled not with magic, but with the wisdom and kindness he had learned from his humble beginnings, proving that a true heart is the greatest treasure of all.